welcome to the Art of Action Figures. In this episode, we will be taking a look at the newly released SH Figuarts Darth Vader from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. This, to me, appears to be a pretty definitive 6-inch scale Vader. I know there have been a lot of 6-inch scale Vader figures competing for that title. The Empire Strikes Back Black Series Vader, I hear a lot of praise for, and Mafek's Rogue One. The Black Series Return of the Jedi Vader, I had really high hopes for, but the design of the helmet for placing the helmet over the unmasked head just didn't really pan out on that figure, unfortunately, so I was a little bit disappointed by that. And I thought the Return of the Jedi Figuarts Vader, the newest version of it, looked pretty good, except for one pretty significant flaw that is hard for me to overlook, and that was his skirt. And this is the newest Vader from Figuarts, just out now in November 2023. I'm not really sure if he's being sold anywhere in the US. I think there's some kind of like licensing shenanigans with Hasbro and Star Wars. I got this figure from Hobby Genki, which is a Japanese import collectible store. Pre-orders for this figure were like instantaneously sold out. I think there was a lot of consensus when it was announced that this looks like extremely good. And so, the pre-order went pretty much immediately. As the figure starts to get stocked, they usually get a little bit more stock than pre-orders account for. That's how I managed to grab this one. I don't think it's like any special limited edition exclusive or anything like that, other than it's just not sold in the US. But yeah, if you are new to the channel and you're here just for Star Wars more so than Figuarts, I don't do Star Wars figures every episode, but I do also plan to review the new Season 3 Mando and Grogu pack from Figuarts. And in this video, I'm going to be featuring another Star Wars figure from the back catalog. This is the Return of the Jedi Luke. We're going to be trying out this unmasked Vader head. Let's look at the box. We have the Bandai Tamashii Nations logos down here in the corner. Designed by Tamashii Nations in Japan, Bandai Spirits made in China, Darth Vader, Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi. A little blurb about SH Figuarts. Standard action figure series uses the art style and technology of Tamashii Nations to pursue character expression through humanoid action. I really like the SH Figuarts sort of design philosophy. They seem to, the S and H, I think, stand for simple and heroic or something like that. And I think what they mean by that is simple, meaning like not overly engineered looking, and you can have opinions about that, but I think they do a pretty good job overall making the things at least look human. And then heroic, meaning like really posable and dynamic, and I think they strike a really nice balance. We've got the Obi-Wan Kenobi series label here. I don't have a lot of interest in collecting like other figures from it. I think this Vader caught my attention because it's pretty much just a New Hope Vader. I know. Next up, flipping around to the right-hand side, good side for library-style display. Let's spin around to the left-hand side. Not so interesting, except for you've got your Tamashii Nations quality sticker, this holographic anti-bootleg sticker. So always look for this if you are buying a Figuarts figure. Make sure it's authentic. And then spinning around to this lovely, lovely back, we have almost like metallic graphite sort of color. Some nice pictures of the figure. doing combat with Obi-Wan from the series. Picture of the battle-damaged helmet head. Another head-to-head with Obi-Wan, and then showing off the swinging saber effect. Very nice. Ages 15 and up. Choking hazard. Small parts not for children under 3. So there are a lot of small parts, I can promise that. And designing for 15 up means they don't have to design this thing to be smashed around in the sandbox, so that's good. The box overall is kind of this like glossy black, and it's not my favorite Figuarts box. I really honestly don't like the glossy black. It's kind of, I don't know, doesn't look like their most premium packaging for Figuarts. I think like a matte black would look a lot better, but on the top, Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and on the bottom, some blurbs. Okay, now let's go ahead and break them out. If you have been here before, you've seen my tried and true method of opening a Figuarts box, so we're going to do the usual here. I've actually already cut the tape on the right-hand side, but that is just a little piece right in the middle there. So took my hobby knife and just a gentle slice down the side there, and then we're going to stick the hobby knife under the back of the flap and push back and up, and that lets us lift the flap. Very clean, no wrinkling. It avoids the little crease in the middle where your thumb goes under the flap. I try not to crease these boxes as much as I can. I know that's not everybody's jar of jam, but it's mine. Taking a look at the packaging on its own now, there is nothing printed on the inner flap, and it looks like we're back to sort of old school style Figuarts. We have some sort of unit numbering going on in there, and then, oh, look at that, Obi-Wan Kenobi SH Figuarts. You can actually read it now. Pretty cool. And then inside the box, you've got an instruction booklet. And this is telling you how to swap out the alternate hands, choose and attach. If you don't choose, you will probably have a hard time attaching. Warning, delicate on the wrist joints, and I agree, wrist joints are one of the highest risk areas on all action figures, and especially imports with the number of alternate hands that you're going to be swapping on and off. Wrist joints are probably the smallest parts on an action figure. And small parts plus part swaps equals risk of breaking. Do be careful. They use different arrows to indicate attachable, removable, or movable. So removable fists, attachable alternate hands, removable chest box, attachable damaged chest box, removable full helmet, and attachable partial helmet. And let's see, anything else to point out? We've got another warning, delicate here, and I think that's referring to the chain on the cloak. It's either referring to the chain on the cloak or the neck peg. Be careful with both, I would say. Oh, we've got more on the back. Good stuff. Okay. Then this explains how to connect his lightsaber hilt to his belt. Also a delicate little tab to plug the hilt. Let's see. You can attach either the straight blade or the swinging blade to the alternate hilt. There are actually two included, one with no port and one with a port. And again, pointing out that the pegs on those blades are quite delicate and they only go in at a certain angle. So just align the angle at the bottom of the blade to the angle at the top of the hilt and you're good. That's it for our instructions, not too complicated here. Last thing, besides the figure tray inside the box, is this really interesting backdrop card. It's just a little thin piece of cardboard, but it has this Vader painting here. Yeah, that's pretty cool, and that just goes behind the tray when the figure's in the box. I don't really love these backdrop cardstocks because they do tend to catch on the tray if you're sliding it in and out, but you can see how that just rests in the back there. Cool. Let's get the box out of the way and start looking at the figure. Now looking at our Vader tray, we can see the accessories on full display. Figure himself. Battle damaged head. 6 pairs of alternate hands, plus the fists he has on. 2 lightsaber hilts, 1 ignited and 1 just for clipping onto his belt. Chest box with battle damage that we can swap for the intact version. And finally, straight red lightsaber blade and a swinging version meant for showing it in motion. Okay. Now, I'm having a very hard time getting it to close properly. You can see there's space at the top between the lid and the tray. Causes the box to bulge out and warp. And it also means that the accessories aren't securely held. Like you can see the blade wiggling around in there. So I don't love that. Not sure what the solution would be, especially if they come with cloth that is not meant to be removed, like these robes. Let's go ahead and lift the tray and see what we have here. So I've already taken this out once, and my initial reaction was I was always under the impression that Vader's helmet was completely black. But this figure actually taught me something that I never knew about the Vader costume, which is, at least in A New Hope, this version, the mask has some silver paint just to make it look more reflective on camera. It's supposed to read as like a glossy black, but the actual like prop has silver in these exact spots. But yeah, when I originally took the lid off, I immediately thought, oh my gosh, what horrible QC problem have I gotten? They painted his whole cheek silver. This is actually accurate to the Vader prop. The reason I was really impressed by this particular version of Vader from SHF is their use of cloth for both the cape and the skirt, and for making both of those pieces wired so that they are posable. Scaling is a thing for fabric just as it is for like model proportions. Second, the scale of the fabric also affects the way that the fabric will rest over the figure. Let me show the cape on its own, and we'll talk about all the wires it has, because there's quite a few. There's the long one across the bottom. There's one going up either side. There is a small one around the collar. And then there's actually 3 additional wires vertically at each of these seam points. And so it's extremely posable. And looking at the outside, it has almost effectively some like scaled down velvet. A couple little splotch marks, really just that one right at the front of the collar. That one is a little bit off-putting, and I wonder if I can just scratch it off. It doesn't seem to want to scratch off. So not perfect there. There is another one that I saw kind of inside the neck, but that one doesn't bother me. Okay, now let's take a look at the Vader body. We have the tunic, and it is also a very fine, wired black material. It's different material compared to the cape. The wires are a little bit lighter gauge, and I think it has a really nice draping effect. It definitely like reaches all the way down to the floor, so that's good. And it continues up over his torso. It is running under the breastplate. I think in A New Hope, at least in some of the scenes, it is lying on top of the breastplate, and I think it looks kind of weird like that, so I'm glad they went with this. That button changes from green to blue between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back for some reason, and it remains that way. This row of buttons at the bottom, I think one of them flips to red and the rest silver. Other differences, maybe his gloves. I forget if maybe he has like a smoother glove in Return of the Jedi or in Empire. The color of his breastplate and his shoulder pauldrons may be less silver, more black. That is such a nice looking boot. I want a pair of those. These glossy shin guards. What's the proper name for those? I think they might be greaves. We're going to go with greaves, but the glossiness on there is beautiful, and it matches the shoulder pauldrons. I think I got that one right. As well as the helmet, of course. Finally, if you're really, really put off by the chest box having the wrong color button, this one is designed to be removable, and I'm pretty confident that I could 3D print a copy of this, paint it the Return of the Jedi and Empire colors, and boom, you've got your all-encompassing Vader. I'm having a misbehaving pauldron on this shoulder. It does not want to remain in the position that I think it should be in. And I'm not sure what's going on. It's on a ball peg on top of a world's tiniest hinge. And the flex on the... This is a very delicate piece now. I don't want to damage it. This format video is a little bit different. I'm just kind of taking this one in. This is one of my first Star Wars Figuarts, so I'm kind of learning in real time here. So we have the green and red version of the chest box. We also have the green and red belt buttons here. You can see the buttons. There is actually like a little clear acrylic over the top of them, but they look like retro sci-fi buttons with that colored film underneath and then sort of an acrylic cap. Even down to these little tiny ones on his belt. They look like that. These must be his lung regulators. I don't know. He's got one on each side. Oh, one other detail on the Return of the Jedi Vader. Because he has that plastic tunic, his lower torso just looks so... At his sides, it just like cuts in at this really hard angle, and it looks a little weird. And so I think the same thing's probably going on underneath this one, but it hides it pretty well, and you'd never know. So that's awesome. It's got a little bit of like bits sticking out at the shoulder there. I'm not sure if that should necessarily be like that. Spinning him around to the back, you can see the back of his belt is just kind of straight matte gray. There's his clip for his lightsaber hilt. Underneath the skirt, he's got his pants. And he actually has another belt for just his codpiece, I guess. Another difference in the costume between movies is the color of his lenses. In the earlier, I guess the first version of the Vader costume, they are more like tinted red. Later versions, it's more straight black. You can see the little silver details in the breathing apparatus. He's got the sort of vents way in there. That is some serious detail. That's great. I don't think the top of the helmet comes off or anything. Doesn't feel like it should, but spinning it around, it is all this nice glossy black. Okay, and then the one that I think a lot of people are interested in, and I'm kind of seeing this one as more of a bonus. It's not an essential look for me, but it is quite nice. That is this damaged Anakin's face showing under there. There is some... I mean, it's really hard to say if that's like Hayden Christensen supposedly should be. But hardly recognize him in this particular situation. If you angle the face appropriately, the eyes line up perfectly. And you can see the yellowing Sith eye there. Really gruesome scarring. There is a little bit of skin tone paint going on to the surface of the helmet, it looks like, right there. But you could read that just as it's not visible from most angles, and if you see it, you could, I mean, it is right next to like these ridges, so it kind of reads as like just another part of his head scarring. And the really like chewed up, I guess metallic look of this shredded segment here looks really good. There is some, I don't know, almost like rust, brown dry brush on the inner part of that mouthpiece where the cut's happening. I don't know if that's coming off. Let's see. I don't know if this is a full head. I'm guessing probably not. I haven't seen anyone take this apart, and I'm definitely not going to do it, so you may need to look elsewhere if you are interested in that. I don't have the Black Series version of this one, but I did see that that one does have a full head underneath and also looks quite nice, but it doesn't include the undamaged head. or swappable parts for the body. But yeah, this is pretty slick. I'm happy with this. Like I said, not totally essential for me. Here we have the damaged chest box. It does have some very cool slash marks going through it. And they did maintain the silver paint on this and on these spars up and down the side. There's also some gray paint on these switches, which is also present here. There's even still a bit of silver going through here. And you know what? There is some very dark green and red there, suggesting that this is like damaged to the point that it's deactivated. I am not going to show off all of the alternate hands, but I will at least read out which ones we have. There are 2 lightsaber gripping hands, 2 index finger pointing hands, 2 what appear to be force choking hands, and then we have 3 sort of variants of open, relaxed looking hands, and these are ones with the thumbs spread, ones without the thumbs spread, and one with all the fingers spread. And that one's probably for, using the Force to stop a ship and things like that. That was a cool scene. And then we have these 2 lightsaber hilts. I don't think there shouldn't be any differences in the paint applications on them. One of them has a hole at the top. The other difference is the clip for storing on the belt. On the one that is not storable, meaning the one with the hole for the blade, that clip is completely sculpted and painted silver. And then it's mostly just silver paint all the way down. I'm guessing it's molded in this black base color, and then the silver is painted all around the hilt. I don't think there's any like red ignition switches or anything. I'm trying to look, but I think it's mostly just black and silver, or it is entirely black and silver. Silver is really cleanly painted in between those little ridges on the bottom of the hilt. Very bottom is just silver. Paint that they've used, it's very thin, and so it looks, from hyper close it looks a little bit like paint, but from this distance it starts to just kind of look like metal, and that's really cool. Okay, that is the ignited saber hilt, and then for his storable hilt, it, in place of that painted and sculpted clip, it just has a little port, and that's where it can plug into the belt very cleanly. Same paint applications all the way throughout otherwise. As far as actually porting it on, it's a little bit tight, if I'm honest, but I guess that's a good thing. It's not going anywhere anytime soon, but that piece of his belt is pretty thin, and so I do get a little concerned when swapping that on and off the belt. It's just on this kind of peg that sticks off the side of the belt. And as far as removing it from the belt, it's not too bad. You just want to get really close to the joint and apply just a real small amount of force. And then when putting it on, I wouldn't suggest just like pushing it on there. I would actually put something like a finger, or I'm going to use my pen here behind this just to keep the piece from bending inward. And it's not all the way on, but that feels a little safer to me. Also gives it a little bit more posing room. I don't know if I'll be using this too much. It makes me nervous, but it is an option if you are so inclined. And it looks nice and tidy once it's there, and it is pretty secure even when it's not quite on all the way. So that's pretty good. All right. Speaking of things that make me nervous, let's take a look at these lightsaber blades. And I liked the way they did the Luke blade a little bit better than this, with the blade having part of having the emitter at the end. This peg on the translucent plastic is just very thin. Or it's just a very thin piece in general, but it just goes in like the instructions show at this angle. And I don't want to push it too hard. There is a little bit still left on that, but I'm not going to notice it. As far as the height, not sure how tall the lightsabers are supposed to be, but this one looks fine to me. It is very thin. For comparison, let's see. Do have one Black Series saber here, maybe a little teaser of something coming soon. You can see, compared to the Black Series Dooku saber, it is a little bit longer and thinner. The reds are pretty similar, but this one does have a little more transparency or translucency to it. Let's get light behind it and you can see what I mean. See how the Figuarts saber is almost completely whited out by the light, whereas the Dooku saber is still pinkish where the light's going through. So that's what I mean by a little bit more transparent. All right, and then to scare myself, let's swap the swinging blade on. So to do that, I'm going to grab very close to the peg. Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't love that. Swapping that, it feels like I could break it every single time I do it, so not an extreme fan of that. I would rather just have two sabers, one ignited, one unignited. But then I guess you couldn't do this, or do three sabers with this one. And that's a lot of paint. Okay, so same deal here. We're just plugging this in, and it does go in where one edge of the fan is straight up and down, aligned with the hilt, and the other edge is trailing behind. And I'm having trouble getting that all the way in. Let me take it off camera for a sec. So I'm having trouble getting it to go in any more than that. That's close enough for me, but you can judge if that is an unacceptable gap. But that has a very neat effect. And for comparison again, I have one of the very few Black Series versions of this effect, which is the reason that I've got Dooku out. This swap scares me equally, so holding my breath here. Yeah, hate that. Okay, and let's see, which way is it gonna swing? That way, I think. I appreciate that both saber swinging effects are like trailing behind the straight saber, and they don't just look like a fan coming out of a hilt. That helps achieve the effect. I'm guessing this is probably the same mold as the Mandalorian Luke, which has a green version. I think the Black Series one pulls this off a little bit nicer, in my opinion, and I don't say that lightly, but it's a little bit thinner in the trailing part. Like you can see in profile, the Vader Figuarts saber is same thickness all the way across, and you can really only tell which way is forward by the angle of the hilt. The Dooku version actually gets a little bit thicker around what's meant to be the blade and tapers off from there. And the swinging portion is a bit thinner. And so I think it suggests swinging more effectively than this, which doesn't have that same taper. So that's interesting. It still looks really pretty darn cool. Mostly that is a suggestion to Black Series to include this with every single character that has a lightsaber. I dare you. One final accessory, which is not included with this Vader, that I am very interested in, is this alternate unmasked Vader head from the Return of the Jedi Luke figure. You can also get this head in the Return of the Jedi Vader figure himself. The newest version of it includes this. However, that Vader has all the problems with the body that I mentioned before. I already had this Luke with this head doing nothing, and I really had my fingers crossed when I managed to get a hold of the Kenobi Vader here, and I am delighted to report that this lovely head is perfectly compatible. Rather than get the Return of the Jedi Vader and have kind of an entire figure that I don't really like, I've got a Luke that I really do like, and this lovely piece, which I think is a really, really good quality head sculpt for Sebastian Shaw. Sebastian Shaw. We're going to go with Sebastian Stan. Sebastian something. This is a really nice unmasked Sebastian Shaw Anakin. Honestly, I still think nobody's done it better than this version. Even including the second Figuarts version. Certainly not the Black Series version. I did not like the Return of the Jedi look that neglected to make his skin as cold and dead looking as it does here. That is exactly what I think of Vader and the Emperor. They kind of messed up on both of those in my opinion. But this is a really beautiful piece. It still has all these silver mechanical bits on the back, or the top of the bottom, of the mask. How about that? You can't see it at all because the light went out. The top of the bottom of the mask has all these silver accents on it. Very, very nice piece. Shame for this to just sit in the Luke Skywalker box. And I am very happy to report that it fits perfectly. Completely compatible with new Vader here. And in my opinion, looks great. And I know it's not the right colors, it's not the right costume, and I don't care at all, but if you do, that is fine too. I am just glad that I have something to do with this. I would be careful about his lower neck piece. I'm not sure if it's designed for this particular collar setup, and it does protrude a little bit past that part where the chain goes. I would be careful with that, but otherwise, I've got my Return of the Jedi Vader the way I like him. And I guess if you really wanted, you could pop this fist hand off and point that little piece away, and there you go. Vader's your father. I'm happy with that. I think if you really wanted to go the extra lengths to get it as close to accurate, get a custom chest box with the alternate colors, and you could even pull out this whole wrist peg and maybe get a custom piece that just goes in to the forearm there and looks, maybe has some mechanical details on the end, some wires coming out. But I'm just so pleased that this head neck peg is exactly the same. And yeah, it's not a adapt it, it's not a blue tack situation, it's not a too bad buy the other Vader situation. Completely exactly the same. So very pleased that that works. Just to compare the likenesses here, obviously a few years pass in between. We de-Sith the eyes, but you can see the scar details. They kept those consistent. Let's get it up close here actually. You've got some de-Sithified eyes. Very nice. And that makes this complete. I'm not sure the best way to apply this cape. I think that the helmet just has to go inside the cape. I don't think it can go over it and still connect. But man, that's a wide base on that helmet. It sure would be nice if it could go over the cape and the cape could kind of be pinned under the helmet. Okay, and then the other thing to be really careful when you're swapping the head is, you see the chain in there? Don't let the neck like scrape on the chain. So make sure the chain's out of the way before you apply any pressure to connect the neck. And then this head, I just don't like pushing on it because it is kind of hollow feeling. And I am a little concerned that I would damage it if I push it in the wrong way. And that's another reason why I wouldn't want to try pushing the head over the cape. Because if there's any resistance there and I manage to like push down on the face, one of these little nubbins on his chin might come off, who knows. So I'm sure I am overthinking this. Okay, you also don't want to scrape the chain onto the breastplate. Alright, on the continuing adventures of figuring out how to get this helmet over this cape with... Okay, we got the helmet back on. The cape is still going up under the helmet, and I don't love it, but maybe now that the helmet's on, I can pull it down and position it around his neck. I think that might be a lost cause. Maybe somebody else out there is more skilled with this and can show me how to do it. I am just, I really would like to not have his... It's hard to see it because it's so dark in there, but yeah, so the cape just like fills up into this space in the helmet, and I really would like it to just like sit under the helmet, and I don't know how to make that happen. So if anybody can figure that out, let me know, and I will be very grateful. You could maybe tuck the chain in between. Not sure that's a good idea if you don't want to scrape something though. Honestly, I don't love that this is a metal chain. I would rather it was a soft material that was flexible and wouldn't scratch things, like the really shiny armor plate that is sitting on. Okay. We're just going to take his saber holding hand and push it onto the wrist peg. It's a little bit of a tight fit now. Okay, it does eventually go on. Nice thing about this wrist, you can hinge it any way you want. Vertical, horizontal, in between. Any gesture, any force choke, any lightsaber position is achievable with that wrist design. And then the saber simply slots into the hand. And the circle is now complete. The grip on the saber isn't quite as firm as it could be. I think you maybe need to wedge the button into the grip to get him really holding it comfortably. These gloves have such a lovely gloss finish on them, though I don't want to scratch it, even on the interior of the fingers. And unlike Black Series, these hands are not really meant to be flexed and stretched. They're a harder plastic, so do not try stretching them around to get him to hold it better. Let's go ahead and put one of his other hands on. So just pull the hand straight away from the arm and then here's his pointing left hand. And these hand swaps are a little bit tricky. Okay. The Imperial March music, I think, comes to mind when looking at this guy, and I think that is a success. I'm going to run through his articulation, maybe a couple poses, comparisons, size comparisons, and things like that, and then we'll wrap it up, okay? Alright, now to run Vader's articulation, I'm going to equip his other saber-holding hand. And there will be a point where we test whether he can actually hold the saber with two hands. A kind of critical skill for a swordsman, in my opinion. And not just can he hold it with two hands, can he pose and use it with two hands? Black Series. Looking at you. Okay, come on now. I don't like these wrist swaps. They make me a little bit nervous. I mean, the pegs are nice and thick as far as like wrist pegs go from that side, but they're a little thin there. And this is taking a lot of force due to just how hard these hands are. And I get they're like a nice glossy glove, and you want to get that texture in there. And I think sometimes they use harder plastics to get more texture, or like more consistent texture, but I don't know, this isn't exactly fun. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna have the cape on as long as we can, because it is kind of in my opinion, part of the look. I don't really have much interest in Vader without the cape. It will probably start to get in the way for some of the poses, so I will probably just lift it out when we do that. We're also going to keep the default helmet on, not going to do anything funny like take his head off, because I want to see how he poses when he looks like Vader. Alright, now, starting with the cape. I don't really know how to approach this. I talked about what the wire layout is like. I do want to convey, like, it is an articulated piece of cloth, but I'm not sure what poses people would like to see the cape in, so let me know. I will just show you it can fan out quite a lot. And from the other side, if you spin him around, quite a good wingspan there. As for his skirt, fans out about that much. I know a problem with the Return of the Jedi Vader was the incomplete wiring meant that like you could pose it up and then it would just fall. This one, I'm happy to say, it doesn't necessarily plug in under anything, but it does kind of squish under the helmet. And so you can get this like, I mean, about there it starts to lose its rigidity and fall down. But that's like elbow height that it can bend upward from, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, so about at his elbows, it'll go up. Let's see, what about swooshing back? It's not precise, but cloth never really is. And you can get it 90 degrees back. Same. Oh, I almost spoke too soon there. I thought the skirt would do the same, but it's got a little bit too much weight with the wire, I think. And you can maybe get it. Going straight back. Okay, that looks a little silly, but the idea is, let's show off the range of motion. Okay, while we've got the cape up and out of the way, is there anything else we want to see cape-wise? It can wrap around him quite a bit, but not full Dracula. It can only cover about his arms on either side. But at the bottom it is a bit broader, and so it can actually fit. It can actually kind of swoop around at an angle. And let's see, will it stay like this if I just stand him? Gotta find his feet in there. Yep, it'll stay just fine. Cape, not quite reaching the floor in the back. Little bit of a concern for me. Let's see. This is the middle wire here, this seam. So I try to get it centered and see if I can get it to just like lay on the floor and keep it together in the front. Not exactly, so you can see a little bit of space under here. Not much, but just a little bit, enough to keep it from like swooping across the floor and looking really awesome. Still looks pretty awesome. It is entirely a black cape, so it's a little less obvious where the cape ends and the shadow of the cape begins. I think that's about it. If I think of anything else, I'll go back to it and try to edit things in, but let's go over the rest of the articulation, and I'm just going to pose the cape towards his back while we do this. Let's start with our sort of up-down tilts. Up, down, forward, back, and then we'll do tilts to the side. Okay, so head. If you make sure the chain is out of the way, it still does not look down too much. That's like the eye line there. There is a double ball peg on the neck and then another ball into the neck, but there's just a lot of apparatus going on up here, so there's not a ton of room for any of those joints to do a whole lot other than connect to the body. It looks up, I mean, it's less than 30 degrees or so up and down. Getting a couple little fingerprints on there, but not too bad. I'm trying my best not to get them all over, but it's kind of a balance between like being able to hold it. You can see his silhouette there. He's got a skinny little booty, but you know what? I'm not sure how much booty is left in there. 2 joints in the torso. And that's a really, really impressive amount of range. Okay. I wasn't expecting that, and with all of that together, he can look up that much without using the lower body. And that's pretty good. Eyes to the skies there. Then looking and going down at the torso. Looking down at the head, he gets eyes to the ground. His belt does kind of move out of the way with that lower torso joint, and that is pretty darn impressive, honestly. I was not expecting it to move that much for how much is going on in there. But they've done a really nice job. It's a double hinged elbow. Let's see if it gets double hinge worthy range. It sure does. Very nice. Past 90 degrees, so that's what you want. Wrist hinge, range on that guy, about that much, and there. So that'll get you your lightsaber posing. And then horizontal hinge, about that much for your force choking. This much for your expression. Okay, now let's talk about his hips. They are very old school Figuarts hips. You don't see them like this too much anymore, but it's a drop down ball peg. So it does drop. And you can see the height of compare the relative heights of his knees there. This cod piece, they have molded it in a very firm, very hard plastic. And I think that is questionable. I would have expected this to be soft, to get out of the way of the legs, especially with all the trouble they went to give him a cloth skirt. He can kick forward fine, but you can see it goes way to the side, unfortunately, just because this isn't going to move. To work around it, he does swivel at the waist, so you can kind of compensate for the side kicking with a little bit of rotation there. So he has a thigh swivel kind of embedded, like Mafex style, or Figuarts 1.0 hip style. Doesn't get like full 360, but gets, let's see. Actually, I can demonstrate it. 45 degrees by the angle of the foot. So that's pretty good. The knee is also a double hinge, and it bends past 90 degrees down. Not bad for an old robot man. Ankles. Uh-oh. What's going on with this ankle? This one's moving okay. I think they're just on ball pegs in there. And I think they are single ball pegs, so you're not going to be doing anything too interesting with these, unfortunately. And this right side, for whatever reason, it's not moving enough. There we go. Okay, it just maybe was a little tight, but not a ton of downward movement on that foot. Not a ton going up. Does swivel a little bit, but runs into the armor. Toe hinge works well enough. Okay. Now we're going to get T-pose going. While we do that, we'll talk about these armor pieces, these pauldrons, because they will need to get up and out of the way to T-pose at all. And they are on a little tiny hinge that's connected to the shoulder. And then on top of the outer part of the hinge is a ball. And the shoulder appears to be connected to that on a ball. So you get like a little bit of rocking motion with it, but also some hinging up and down. Not my favorite design. It feels a little fiddly. We turned the lights up a little bit, so hopefully you can see him a little better. Let's look at those shin guards and see if we can get those details I was trying to capture earlier. Yeah. Okay. Let's see now. It doesn't, I don't know, these shoulder pauldrons, they just like never want to stay the way I want them. And so they're a little bit fiddly. They get out of the way well enough, but they don't really look great unless the cape is draped over them or the arm is posed. I think more often than not one of those is going to be happening, but they do hinge up out of the way to let him almost get T-pose. It's going to be a very fancy script T, but I do worry that they will scratch that lovely shiny breastplate, and I'm sure they would if you are not careful, so do be careful there. That's the best T-pose I can get, but I think what we're going to do for just the sake of the articulation segment, we'll do the old school workaround. Swivel the hinge back. Not exactly a T-pose, but something close. And really what I want is just a straight line across the shoulders so we can tell how much this guy is moving. Tilt is not especially significant, but it does a bit. And then swiveling and tilting is a little bit possible. Do be mindful of the cape situation at all times. There's a lot to be mindful of with this figure. This is a very mindful figure. And I don't mind a mindful figure. I think there's a place for something that you want to... It's a very capable figure, but you have to treat it with the sort of care that you treat like a high-performance sports car or something. Okay. Now we will test his torso range to the sides. And honestly, I am pretty impressed by that. Again, the torso movement on this guy, I did not see it coming. Like, it's not a ton, but I was expecting nothing. So, really, hats off to whoever has engineered this torso. I am very impressed at how much range is packed into that. Now legs, kick up to the side. Ooh, that's a pose we didn't do. Let's try skirt and cape all blowing to one side. And let's go ahead and kick out this leg. So that's all you got with no hinge movement. With the hinge, increases a little bit. I think the real limiter at the lower body is going to be these ankles. Not much use getting splits like this if your ankles can't rock. We'll try the Glenn Webb / Mike Case pose. Shout out to both of them. But This is going to be a little bit embarrassing, I think. With his feet flat on the floor, this is about his widest stance. Okay, next up, we talked about the specialty joints at his shoulders. We talked about a lot of stuff with the cape. Last thing, let's see those butterfly joints. There are butterfly joints of some kind in here. I haven't really paid much attention to them yet, but they have been working themselves a little bit in different poses, and it looks like it's a sort of long ball peg, or a long ball hinge going in to the torso here. And so you get not just some butterfly movement, you also get some like nuanced shoulder up and down. So that's real cool. Like that a lot. As far as like getting that out past the armor piece though, I'm worried with that armor being so hard that that will scratch this lovely arm. If I push it too much. And I think that's gonna mean he gets a Sour Swordsman Award. I don't really have a Sour Swordsman Award. I've been thinking about I want to have some awards for figures that do exceptionally good or bad things, and Sour Swordsman might be one of them. But that arm I managed to get to come out just a little further. Altogether, that's what you get with the butterfly joints though. I'm doing my best here, but again, I don't want to run this arm into that chest because it will scratch it. So I'm trying to kind of position the arm so it rides just below it, still use the butterfly joint, not break anything, and this is the most I'm getting out of it. I think it's just a forward hinge on the butterfly joint, so I don't think there's any backward range to show off. Yeah, I think that's going to be your range there, and that's at a pretty low angle. Not going to be doing any exciting A poses. If I pull out the butterfly joint, does it go any straighter up? Yeah, a little bit. So if I get that butterfly joint involved and just pull the socket of the shoulder out just a little. Okay, moment of truth. Can he actually hold the saber over his head with two hands? And I think that's a no. But that I wasn't really expecting. I do expect him to hold it with two hands in front of his body. Let's see how awkward that gets. And this is not like a Black Series figure where you can just kind of like bend stuff until it gets there and then hold together with tension, like held together at the saber hilt. You don't want to do that with this type of figure. It will either break something or stress something. But that's not terrible, and I think I've got the saber here. And I think the best way to do the saber is kind of twist it, put it in the hand with the button going over through the gap, and then twist it around a little bit. That's not the worst two-handed saber holding pose I've seen. Let's get it straight vertical though. That's the real test. And we're going to compare it to Dooku here in a second. Because, like I said, I've got a little bit of a bone to pick with Black Series and their ceremonial butterfly joints. Alright, and here is Dooku, which is an exceptionally good Black Series figure. Does have my typical complaints still apply. Very few accessories, including no lightning hands. I'll probably do a video about him at some point, but what I wanted to show is just like, what are we doing with butterfly joints and sword characters? So Dooku's got some exceptionally long arms, for one. With the butterfly joints, they get that close together in front of the chest. These are forward-backward hinges. They do not go... you know what? They go backward more than they go forward. How about that? I am not sure that I have ever seen that before. It's weirdly asymmetric. Not really sure why. But yeah, the butterfly joints are this like Hasbro style forward-backward hinge. They've actually started updating this to be almost more like the old Figuarts style ball cup socket, like a deep socket with a little rotator cup around the shoulder. Anyhow, that is about as close as they get in front of the body. Now, bend the elbows a little bit, and his exceptional long arms do give him a little bit of an edge, but also the fact that he has a rather narrow chest is helping as well. He does have a bit of an odd hilt that makes it a little awkward to hold it with two hands. Okay, and there you can see. He gets it a little closer to his chest, and ultimately he has a little bit better time achieving like a two-handed swinging pose, other than the fact that his face has no expression. But very nice figure. I like this one. Okay, last, let's go ahead and try some quintessential Vader poses here, and we'll bring out some of his companions to do so. Let's go ahead and pop off these fist hands. I don't really know how much Vader does with fist hands other than offer ruling the galaxy. So let's maybe just try one of these relaxed pairs. Every figure needs a good pair of relaxed hands. Maybe doing a little walk and talk. And Vader has a pretty top-heavy walk. That's probably just due to the costume, if I had to guess. And him being a rather top-heavy guy, so he kind of like lumbers his body forward from the head down. I've noticed this little blemish on the outer part of the cape. I don't know if that was always there, if that has emerged during this review somehow. Let's see, he needs to twist at the waist a little bit. I think I'm running into a problem with these ankles, just not really being too posable. Here we go. You can't have Vader doing a little walk and talk without his favorite walking companion. This is the Black Series Emperor Palpatine. He does the job. I mean, mostly I just want to keep the hood on though, because boy, that skin tone is not right at all. Been thinking about repainting this guy. I got him for $6 at Ross, so I'm not too precious about his keeping him in mint condition or anything. His center of gravity is somewhere in his waist, so that's not too bad actually. Let's see, I think this skirt, we're going to pose the cloth first. So it's going to be kind of trailing behind on this side, following the leg. And this side, it's going to be just curling in front of the leg a little bit. Capes are not the most convenient article of clothing to wear, but if you're going to wear one, you've got to swoosh it when you're walking, and you know Vader is all about swooshing his cape and looking cool. That's what he does. I think those two look quite nice together. Okay, and the nice thing about the cloth skirt is you can get this essential Vader pose. Down on one knee. What is thy bidding, my master? Come on, Palps. Tell him what your bidding is. We will build another Death Star. Yeah, once again, just Black Series Palpatine. Not a bad figure, especially not for that price. I think his face is a little bit scary. I mean, his skin tone should... I don't know what it is with like their Emperor and their unmasked Vader, but Palpatine's skin tone should be like this. As should unmasked Vader. So, not real sure what happened there. I think I might try to repaint him at some point. And yeah, you can really get this Vader into some quite nice articulated poses, and I think this is great for the sort of new era Vader, where he's almost like just a really powerful force of nature more than lumbering robot guy. I'm sure other channels out there, like Action Display, will really put this guy through the paces, so check that one out if you are interested in Star Wars poses especially. He always has some really, really great stuff. I'm kind of new to this particular genre of figure, so let's get our friend, the Count, and his strangely sweaty face. you're posing like an impact, post-impact like this, you got to think about what arc could create this deep of a slash, and then follow that. And you know what would really sell this is two things. I think we need a light behind the lightsaber. Yeah. Slashing upward. I think it would be like underhand kind of attack, like that. I think I'm liking this better. I don't know, it just seems like fancier, and I think Dooku's fighting style is just like overly fancy. Yeah, I like that a bit more. Cool. Oh, that's the spot right there. So if I just move this away a little bit and maybe turn off this big light. Oh yeah, now we're talking. Can I hide the light behind Dooku? Yeah, I probably could. That's probably the ideal spot for it right there. Pretty cool. Okay. He can't quite hold his neck because of his elbow bend not being deep enough. So we'll make it look like he's gonna go for his neck. Wish he could move his neck a little bit more. Kind of just looks like he's about to start boxing. The happy couple. But let's see if we can get him to actually sit on the floor. A little awkward with the legs, but I think it'll do the trick. Use the cape to kind of prop him up. That'll probably work right with me. There we go. Get the skirt in there. Hides everything nice and clean. Cape is back here, propping him up. Palpatine, in the immortal words of Mace Windu, this party is over. You're going feet in the air. I just love the scene where he flips over his desk like this. Very fun. Fun moment in a movie that has very few fun moments, gotta say. Alright. Summarizing things here. The cloth cape and skirt, I'm new to posing, so let me know if there are any particular test poses you would like to see me do on future wired cloth garments, or even just like soft cloth like this Palpatine one. Doesn't have wires in it, but you can still kind of get it posed if you hook it into his fingers or drape it around things and such like that. So yeah, let me know about that. so pleased that I can do this and the battle damaged Anakin look from Kenobi or Rebels, and love the array of accessories. I wish they were a little bit easier to change out. I especially love having lots of expressive hands, and the swappable chest box just gives me more options for the future, so that's pretty cool. Let's see. I feel like I am just barely scratching the surface with the posability of this figure. This has been an in-depth look at the SH Figuarts Kenobi series Darth Vader. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.